For June 15th, 2023. I'd like to start with the call to order and the roll call, please.
Yes, Chair. Design Review Board Member Malat. Design Review Board Member Adorcio. And Chair Kim.
Here.
And Design Review Board Member Chong and Rosner are excused.
Great. At this time, we will take oral communications. Anybody who wishes in the public to address the board on any subject matter not on the agenda may do so at this time. You have 3 minutes. Please, you can go to the mic and please provide your name and address. Is there anybody from the public that wants to talk about anything not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to the staff briefing.
I have no briefing tonight.
Okay. Great. Minutes. So we're going. Anybody would like to make a motion about adopting the minutes from the last meeting? I'm going to have to abstain because I wasn't here, but it was June 1st, 2023. Anybody would like to make a motion?
I'll second. Did you?
I'll move.
Oh,
I'll move to accept the minutes as written.
Okay.
And second.
We'll have a roll call vote. Is that how we're doing it?
You
now?
could probably do that as a voice vote.
Okay, let's just do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And one abstention.
Perfect. Thank you.
Now we'll be going to the public hearing section. Let me lay out the ground rules for this. The applicant will have 5 to 20 minutes to present at the mic. Then after that, there will be questions by the board to staff or the applicant. After the question session, the hearing is open up to the public. Each person has 3 minutes, and each person may not allocate their testimony time to other speakers. After the public testimony period, the applicant may respond, and the applicant has 5 minutes. After that, we close the hearing to the public and we deliberate amongst ourselves and vote. So first on our agenda today is 283 Cecilia Way. It is our understanding that they would like to continue to a date certain. I believe staff, could you help me with that date?
Yes, it would be July 20th.
July 20th. Okay. So does anybody here from the board want to make a motion to accept that continuance?
I'm sorry, Chair Kim, before you make a motion,
Yep.
I'd recommend you maybe discuss whether or not it made sense to do so. And then after that, we would have to open it up for public comment, but we would want to limit the public comment just to the fact of the continuance.
Okay. Anybody want to discuss the continuance? I'm in favor of it.
I think given that we have 4 items tonight, I'd say taking one off is a good
Yeah.
idea.
I guess I'd have to agree with Jim.
Okay. Okay. And we'll open up to the public. If anybody from the public wants to state whether or not they would like to continue, that's the only matter being presented right now for the public for consideration. And if you would like to make a statement, you have 3 minutes. Please come to the mic. Do we need to have the applicant present?
No, we don't.
Okay.
But we should check with whether or not we have anybody from the Zoom who wants to make comment.
Okay.
We do have a hybrid meeting. And so if there's anybody who's on the Zoom who would like to speak to this continuance, can you please raise your hand so we can allow you to enter the hearing? I am seeing none, Chair.
Okay.
And so, yes, now would be a time for a motion.
Okay. We'd like to close it off to the public. If we can make a motion, someone from the board would like to make a motion at this point.
I'd move that we accept the application for continuance to July
20th.
20th. And
that's good.
That's it.
Maybe like to second it.
Second that, please.
We can just take a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None. And any abstentions? None. So so the motion has been adopted to continue 283 Cecilia Way to July 20th. Next on our agenda is 740 Hillary Drive. We can have the applicant come up. The applicant has up to 20 minutes. And it looks like we have a clock now. Wow.
Okay, got it. Hello, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Is it picking up in the mic?
I would suggest moving as close as you can to that mic or moving the mic closer to you so we can
Is
make
that
sure
better?
it's recorded.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
really good. Thank
Great,
you.
Thank you.
Perfect, great. Thank you, everyone. This project is being submitted as a variance for a 33 square foot addition onto the front of an existing garage at 740 Hillary. On the diagrams, as you can see on the board here, the image to the left shows where there's an existing non-conforming setback where an existing garage is. And what we're proposing to do is turn the garage into habitable space and bump out the front by just close to a foot and capturing 33 square feet. A very small section of that falls into the non-conforming setback. And that's the part that we're requesting a variance for. I have to turn. Please hold. I got it. Okay, there we go. Yep. Okay, perfect. Okay, so just briefly over the code analysis, we are well below the allowable lot coverage and FAR for this project. The total footprint right now, or existing total footprint was 1,529. The new footprint is 1,562. So we fall well below the allowable on both FAR and lot coverage for this addition. This is just an existing plan showing what the existing conditions are today. We are converting the existing garage into living space. Roof plan showing the extent of the scope of work. And as you can see on the bottom left-hand image, that's the area that we're going to be converting. We're putting in a bathroom, a closet, an entry into this area. And the washer and dryer will remain in here, as well as the furnace. And there is already access from the existing house to this space. And then as far as the facade is concerned, it's very simple. We're just basically infilling the garage door as we pump it out and introducing a new door and a new window and some downlights. It's just a section showing you how it's laying out. And the material wise, we're keeping it very simple, matching existing windows, matching existing siding, and only introducing that new light. And that's it.
Great. Any questions from the board? Staff?
I have a question about the front yard being totally paved. That's not part of this project, but my question is, when did it happen?
They've been working on the front yard for quite a while.
Okay.
So it's been a continuation for the last couple of years, I believe.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay. Any questions for staff? Hearing none. At this point, we'll open it up for the public. If you are a member of the public, you have 3 minutes, and please state your name and your address, please. Okay, seeing none, no comments. Is there any on the internet?
If anyone has, excuse me, is online right now and wishes to speak on this item, please raise your hand so we can enter you into the discussion. I'll give it a minute, see if people raise their hand. I am seeing no hands, Chair.
Okay, then at this point, we will bring it back to the applicant. You have 5 minutes to make any comments to no comments.
No comments.
Perfect, okay. We'll close the hearing off to the public. And we will deliberate. Anybody wish to start off?
Okay, a couple of things. One is, I can see the reason for the findings necessary for the variance. And I would be able to make them based on the fact that they're an alignment issue for the existing building. I do think there's an couple exterior light fixtures on the front, and Tiburon, for reason of light pollution, requires that those fixtures be fully shielded rather than the carriage lights that you're proposing here. So you'll have to have some kind of shield, fully shielded. They can shine up, down, or on the wall, or all three. And I'm a little concerned about the front yard paving because it's totally paved. And believe it or not, in Tiburon, we have a runoff problem for rainfall. So there's not much we can do about this one now, but just for future things, it's when you pave the whole surface and there didn't seem to be any underground drainage there, it causes problems downhill. And in the future, I think that's something we ought to address.
Okay.
More comments?
Do you have any comments?
No, I have no comments on this.
I think I can make the findings. I can make the findings for the variance. So, for the setback variance. So, shall we try to make someone like to try to make a motion?
A motion to accept the variance
With the findings and
with, and are we going, and with the recommendations that you're going to be of the fully shielded lights?
Yes. Yes.
So to clarify, is that a condition? I believe it might already be in the conditions.
Yeah, I was just looking to see what number it is. Sorry.
It's number 8. It says as conditioned, all exterior lights must be shielded and downlit. So it's already in there.
way ahead of me, sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing that.
It's already in there, number 8.
I know it's in there, but this is 740 Hillary, right?
Yes.
And the draft resolution number 8 on conditions of approval is not that. So let's just make sure the resolution we have presented has it.
It's under guiding principles that I saw that, so it's not necessarily.
That's separate, so we might have to add it as a condition.
Okay, let's add that as
But
condition.
it might be somewhere else in there, so.
It is. It's on page 8, condition number 6. At the time of the building permit, submittal, construction drawings shall demonstrate that all exterior lighting fixtures must be downlit type fixtures with shielded where appropriate. But I can just put shielded and take out but where appropriate.
Okay. That
So-
sounds good. So the motion is to adopt the resolution because the findings for the variance were made, and with the additional change to the shielded downlights.
And their CEQA finding?
Yeah,
Oh, a CEQA finding.
it's exempt.
That it's exempt from
It's
CEQA.
exempt from CEQA. We have to have that as part of your motion.
Okay.
And I would just,
Add that to the motion.
Yes, can we add that to the motion, please?
Yes.
and just to be the lawyer in the room here, one other thing is the conditions of approval have been misnumbered. Just if we can have a condition that they be numbered correctly, just 1, 2, 3 as it goes. So just, we skipped one in there.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Our counting is off.
That's okay. Okay. That sounds great. So those 2 additional conditions, as well as being categorically exempt from CEQA. Would you like to second it?
I second the motion.
We'll have a vote call, roll call. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Any abstentions? None. The motion hereby passes. And we will move on to the next item on the agenda. The next agenda, the applicant for 7 Apollo Road, please come to the mic. And then if somebody can reset that to 20 minutes. Okay.
Hi, my name's Kieran. I'm just going to do a quick introduction of who I am. I'm the homeowner, and I've been living in Tiburon for the last 4 years with my wife, Tatiana. We got a little son, 15 years old. He went through Del Mar. He's now graduated. Well, not graduated, I guess, right? Just got through his first year of his freshman year at Redwood. So during our period while we've been living here, we've recognized how much we love living in Tiburon. And so we've been looking for a place to buy. We found an area in Belveron East that we really liked and endeavored to try and buy a home that we can sort of call our family home. And we've found the spot and hired an architect and tried to create a home that's going to be our family home for some time to come. So, and yeah, we've managed during this process of speaking to some of the neighborhood, asking them sort of what the do's and don'ts were for as far as design was concerned before we sort of fully embarked on what we were doing. And some of the calls were, don't do 2 stories, stay within the setbacks. So that's essentially what we've tried to do. We tried to make sure we were going to get through this process without too much grief. And for the most part, I think we've done that. And I've managed during this time to speak to some of the neighbors while I've been in and around the property. And for the most part, everybody's been super welcoming to us, which has been great. So that helps us look forward to moving into the neighborhood. And yeah, just wanted to give you a quick introduction as to who we were. Thank you.
Thanks, Kieran, and members of the board. Thanks for your time tonight. My name's Abe. I'm the architect on the project, and I'm going to walk you through a little presentation on our design. Let's see.
So the down button moves you forward. There you go.
Got it. Okay, so we got 3 parts that we're going to talk about. We're going to just run through some diagrams and actually take you through some process that we went through in thinking about this project, talk about the proposed design. And then, as Kieran mentioned, we have had some conversations with the neighborhood, and we have some design changes that we want to kind of bring forward tonight. They're not part of the submitted project, but they're some compromises that we're willing to make to sort of make sure that it's a sort of good fit for the neighborhood. So first, I just want to kind of run through some diagrams and our process. When we kind of first started looking at the site, we wanted to figure out what can we do on this site with the setbacks in consideration. And we first looked at a 2-story building, and it's a pretty oppressive wall at the front of the site. We looked at it on the side of the site, no less oppressive, just in a different way. We looked at a partial 2-story building, and to be honest, that didn't really soften it that much either. We looked at the partial 2-story building on the front of the site. We also got initial feedback from the adjacent neighbors that a 2-story building really wasn't appropriate for the neighborhood. So we realized we were going to need to do a 1-story building. And this is what the program looked like of a 1-story building on the site, just without any articulation. It's kind of a uncompromising chunk of a building. So obviously we want to shape it, think about creating a backyard and nook at the back. And then kind of resulting in our final layout on the site, where we are kind of coming off the setback on all sides. We're trying to shape the building a little bit thoughtfully and, sort of make it feel like it fits into the site in a graceful way. Pulling back, looking at the neighborhood pattern, you can see that the scale of the project is really in keeping with the neighborhood. You can see from a density standpoint, many of the homes in this neighborhood, share a similar scale and density in terms of lot coverage. So here's our proposed design as submitted. So I'm not going to walk through great detail on the floor plan. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about it. But essentially, it's a 1-story single-family home. We have a sort of organizing wall that moves through the center of the site. On the right side of it, we have the bedrooms, on the left side, the living spaces. There is a pool in the back as well as an accessory structure. The exterior facade of the building is really natural materials. The primary material is going to be weathered wood, so it'll be a really soft material. We do have accents of zinc, and that's a kind of naturally weathering metal, and a concrete wall that's both structural as well as sort of part of the organizing feature of the house. And you can see this is the east elevation. The north elevation has a little bit more glass. That's the elevation that faces onto the backyard. And then the west elevation, this is the elevation that actually sort of has the least density along the setback. And you can see here the sort of a larger kitchen, living, dining area coming up against the setback there. We are inspired by the nature that surrounds us here. It's a beautiful place, both Marin as well as Tiburon. The kind of rolling hills, the soft grasses, also the kind of, really kind of wonderful boulders that you see just in the open space here in Tiburon. So these were all kind of points of inspiration for the material and approach to the design. That informed the material palette. What you can see here is that the material is all natural materials, all naturally weathering too. So there's nothing here that is an artificial material that's sort of bright and shiny, that's super metallic, that's sort of high tech or anything. It's all sort of soft materials. Primary material is weathered wood. We're going to use a natural cedar, and that's going to be installed at a weathered patina gray already. We have a natural stained warm cedar that's going to be on the underside of the soffits and eaves. We have a sort of medium gray metal that's going to be zinc, so it'll have a natural patina, not a painted metal. And then we have a concrete, and that's kind of reminiscent of the boulders that are found throughout the hills here. A couple views of what this project's going to look like. The first is from the exterior. I'll make a note about the planting on this site. The landscape here is native and drought tolerant. The intent is that it really sort of blends with the sort of natural habitat. We are working with the landscape architect to have pollinator species planted on the site, and the idea that it also kind of flows into this kind of natural wood siding, that there's not a sort of hard barrier between building and landscape. And you can see that the wood is the primary material that's seen from the exterior and from the street. Looking from the back of the building here, this is on the bedroom side. It is more open here. This is sort of like a little private garden for the primary suite. And then from the pool, you can see looking across that pool on the right-hand side is the kitchen, living, dining area. On the left hand is the accessory structure. Looking back, you can see the accessory structure is smaller in scale. You can also see that we do have a 6-foot fence on top of a 3-foot retaining wall. So it actually really kind of hides the accessory structure there at the back. And that's actually replicating an existing condition, which I'll show some photos of. Another view, this is looking back at the kind of large public space for the home, the kitchen, living, dining area. And then back at the accessory structure, again, the scale drops dramatically at the back. And then from the accessory structure back towards the house. So we did do some neighbor outreach in this process, and we spoke with the following neighbors you can see highlighted here. So 11 neighbors, all of the immediately adjacent neighbors. The ones in yellow indicated that they didn't have any concerns or sort of nothing of note that they wanted to bring to our attention. The neighbors highlighted in orange did bring some concerns to our attention. So you can see here, no concerns on the left and those with concerns on the right. 5 Apollo did express some concerns about view, daylight, and acoustics. And 32 Mercury had some concerns about the fence being higher than it currently is, and also about their view. And then 3 Apollo did express concerns on behalf of 5 Apollo. So here's some diagrams. This is the west elevation. And I think what we want to kind of highlight here is that the blue outline is the existing profile of the house as it meets the west elevation. The house that you see rendered is really the mass of the house that touches the setback. And then the red outline is the outline of 5 Apollo. And you can see that there are two windows that are impacted by the mass at the setback. They are the same 2 windows that were kind of adjacent to the existing house, but we do want to take those into consideration. Here's the view from 32 Mercury Lane behind. You can see the story pole across. And you can see that we are going a little higher, but it's a modest increase in height from the existing ridgeline of the house. Here's the view looking back at 32 Mercury. You can see the story pole of the showing that the new fence will not exceed the height of the existing fence. So we did hear that there were some concerns and we wanted to be responsive to those. So we had sort of 12 compromises that we came up with working with Karen and Tatiana. They were kind of very thoughtful about, sort of how do we make sure that we enter this neighborhood in a graceful way, and what are some ways that we can potentially reduce the impact of this project. So I'm going to go through these kind of one by one, and then I have some views of them. The first one is that we're willing to lower the roof by 6 inches. We're also willing to pull the wall, the concrete wall at the back by 6 inches, and then reduce the mass over the kitchen to 10'2". It's currently up at 13.6. Reducing the eave at the west property line, setback, that's adjacent to 5 Apollo by 1'2". For the primary bedroom, we were looking at adding a window and then vines on that concrete wall to soften the effect of it. And then willing to put acoustic fence lining around the HVAC, the pool equipment enclosure. So that will kind of help deal with acoustics. And then we're looking at planting some low privacy trees on the west property line adjacent to 5 Apollo. And then there were 3 trees that were large trees in our initial proposal. And there was concern about the blocking of views from those large trees. So we're willing to reduce those in size significantly. And then lastly, we would be lowering the concrete wall by 6 inches as well. So here's some diagrams of what that looks like. A little hard to tell up on the screen, but effectively the roof line comes down by 6 inches. The concrete wall comes down by 6 inches, and the concrete is also getting shortened. You can see it kind of a little better here as it relates to the west property line. There is kind of up at top is as submitted, and down below is the potential changes. And you can see that we're really opening up the view line past the eave. So kind of really thinking about the view from 5 Apollo out to Ring Mountain beyond. We also did some shadow studies, analysis of the revised changes. What you can see here is at the winter solstice, the equinox, and the summer solstice at 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. And you can see really in no case does the shadow kind of impact the adjacent neighbors. It's sort of because the site is rotated 45 degrees off true north, the impact is really pretty low to the 2 neighbors to the side. So here's what these views look like with these changes. So here's the view as submitted from the front. Here's with the reduced scale. You can see the red line indicating where it was previously. You can see the smaller tree on the left, the vines on the concrete. And then here's the changes kind of noted out. And I'm happy to go back over this if you'd like. Here's a view looking back at that concrete wall as submitted from the pool. Here's the reduction in scale, also the softening of the wall with vines and a window. And there's also a lowering of a tree beyond to allow for views beyond, specifically for 5 Apollo and the view of Ring Mountain. Here's the view looking at the kitchen, living, dining area. And you can see there's a pretty dramatic sort of reduction in scale from that kind of previous outline by both bringing the eave edge in as well as dropping the kitchen. And we've also softened the concrete wall. Looking back towards the accessory structure, you can see there's a taller tree in the corner. There were concerns about views. There's actually 2 existing tall trees that we were going to remove and plant a new tree, but we did think it made sense to do a smaller species there that was less of an obstruction in terms of daylight and views. But we also wanted to add some trees in to provide some more privacy at the west property line. So you can see those trees added on the left and the larger tree reduced in scale. And you can see those noted here. So in total, again, just to kind of recap on the 12 changes that we kind of brainstormed and felt like were good neighborly gestures: lowering the roof by 6 inches, shortening the concrete wall by 6 inches, dropping the roof over the kitchen to 10'2" from 13.6, bringing in the eave at the west elevation by 1'2", introducing a window at the primary bedroom to soften the concrete wall, as well as vines to soften the concrete wall. Taking on the cost of doing acoustic fencing around the pool equipment. Adding privacy trees on the west side of the pool to make sure that there's a little bit of acoustic and privacy visual buffer, but making sure they're not too tall to block the view. We had 3 trees that were significant in scale, and we're willing to reduce those to much smaller species to maintain views for the adjacent neighbors as well as daylight. And then lastly, also dropping the concrete wall by 6 inches. So in summary, just a couple key points to leave you with. This is a home for a family. Karen and Tatiana are really excited about becoming members of this community and this neighborhood. And they did embark in this process, sort of trying to think about how to be thoughtful with outreach to the neighbors. I think they've done a good job and done their best to knock on doors and talk to as many people as they can. It's a single-story residence. That was something we learned very early on in our outreach, that a 2-story residence was not appropriate for this neighborhood. Natural materials. Again, this is a building that is designed to be thoughtful to the environment with its materiality, respectful of kind of the kind of nature that surrounds it. And again, there's nothing shiny, there's nothing painted, there's nothing high tech on the exterior. It's a sort of very natural palette. The other thing I'll note is that the proposed height of the new residence, it only slightly exceeds the existing residence. The ridge line of the existing residence is only 6 inches lower than the proposed high point of the new residence. And then lastly, I think, as you can see from these kind of 12 compromises that we are kind of open to making, that we're very much open to sort of being thoughtful and responsive to the community. And, Karen and Tatiana have been sort of very direct about that. That's what they want to do. They want to be good neighbors and good members of the community. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody from the board have any questions to the applicant or staff? I actually do, but
Go ahead.
Those 12 changes, are any of them implemented in the current design set?
They are not. We did
None
not,
of those are. Okay.
we did not have time. We were, I would say, furiously sort of communicating with neighbors. I know Karen and Tatiana went to a meeting with neighbors. Was it this past Friday night? Is that right? So we've been engaged in outreach really almost up to this meeting. And so in speaking with staff here at the planning department, there wasn't really time to make this change in advance of this meeting. So we felt like we'd just come to the table with our process and present that to you so you kind of understood how we were approaching the project. These are changes we're willing to make, but they are not represented in the application.
Okay. I have a question.
Your organizing wall extends a couple of feet in the front and back of the setback area.
That's correct. Yes.
Did you get an interpretation from the town that because they were not required to have a variance for those extensions?
So I
don't know the answer myself.
Yeah. So I can defer to Christy a little bit, but we do cite the kind of relevant section in the planning code that allows extensions like this. I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's in our documentation set and we have it dimensioned. It's a 3-foot maximum extension.
For overhangs and roof overhangs, but I don't know that it extends to walls. Christy, do you know that?
The wall can be extended into the front setback up to 3 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing else. I have a question. Behind the accessory unit, that space, is that plantable?
There is the shape of the lot is sort of trapezoidal. So there is a small kind of zone behind the accessory structure. It kind of shrinks in dimension as it moves towards the edges, but yes, it's definitely plantable. I don't know if we could get like a large tree back there, but we certainly could get some hedges or shrubs of sort of varying densities.
Do you know what the narrowest dimension is from the wall to the as it, I mean, I've seen just wondering.
I believe the narrowest point is about 4 feet, but it might
Okay.
be less than that clear. I think it might be 4 feet from the property line.
Okay, and then what's contemplated right now? I didn't see the drawings. I don't remember the drawings, for what it was called out as number 18.
Planting area.
Yeah, it wasn't,
SLD.
yeah, it
What
wasn't,
is that, something?
okay.
I see landscape drawings, SLD. So yeah, I acknowledge I don't know if the landscape architect had a specific
Okay,
set of species
Okay.
called out behind there.
okay,
We're definitely open to sort of planting that zone appropriately. We
okay,
want to be respectful to 32 Mercury behind. Their primary concerns was view.
Okay.
So it wasn't necessarily about shielding. Really, they were worried that the fence would get taller and that they would lose their view. So I think whatever we did back there, we'd have to be thoughtful to their concerns behind.
okay. Sorry.
Actually, that's one of the things I wanted to clarify. The complaints of view from the neighbors, is it the fencing? Is it the accessory building, or is it the roof line? So what is it that the biggest concern of view comes from?
I'm trying to go back up.
No, I'm sorry. This is not public hearing time, sorry.
So I don't want to represent the concerns of 32 Mercury, but my understanding is they were concerned that in this view, they would have a reduction in their view from their backyard. And again, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but that was our understanding.
And what does that change from?
So there's only one section within the center. It's over the kitchen, living, dining, where we're going up higher. Most of the houses about 10 feet tall. I don't have it off the top of my head. I think it's 10.2. The kitchen, living, dining as submitted is 13.6. That's about 6 inches higher than the current ridge line of the
I meant the
house.
fencing. How is that? What's the different delta between the current and the proposed?
So yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Karen.
It could please wait till you get to the microphones because we have people online.
I think, well, from talking with 32 Ron at 32 Mercury, if you go back there, you can see where the flags are is where the top of our roof line is. So Ron was telling me that I was stealing his view and he wanted me to drop the house to no higher than the existing house line, because he was saying there's a view, if you look in between the flags and the top of the roof, that was a view. So I don't think that's a view from my personal, view, but I'm respectful that that's what Ron thinks. So a part of the changes that we made was dropping the house down in that height. So it is no longer higher than that. So then the existing ridge line.
But what is the delta between that existing fence to the roof line? Do you think it's like 2 feet? Is it 1 feet? Do you know? Elevation?
Yeah, you can take that.
So, sorry. So that line as stretched out is the 9 feet that we're limited to by the planning code, which is a 6-foot wall, a 6-foot fence on top of a 3-foot retaining.
So what is there right now?
So what you're seeing there, it's a little hard to tell because you see kind of hedge overgrowth.
Yes.
I think it's about 9 feet, and I think the hedge overgrowth is extending beyond.
Okay, and then from the top of the fence, there's no section that I can see that takes the fence and a section of the fence to the top of the roof. So I was just trying to figure out that delta.
So the top of the fence is below the top of the roof because the top of the fence is roughly 9 feet above grade. The high roof as submitted is 13.6, and we're proposing dropping it to 13, which is the ridge line of the existing house.
It's a 3 foot difference.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
The other question I had, the pool equipment is in a fence. Can that be an enclosed building, or does that have to be a fenced up for the pool equipment for sound?
I don't believe it can be enclosed. I would defer to planning staff because I'd have to research. I can't research that on the fly, but my understanding is that we could not do an enclosed space. We would, we might be open to it if it was a viable path for the planning code, but I don't know if that's allowable.
Staff, what's your understanding of what's
So
allowed?
for any pool equipment, if it is in an enclosed structure, it will count as lot coverage and it has to effect, I guess, comply with the setback requirement. If it is an enclosed but unroofed structures, then it will not count as lot coverage.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions to staff? I'm sorry.
I did. I'm sorry. I had two more. The accessory roof, is that a view concern with any of the neighbors?
I don't believe so. The accessory roof is effectively at the same height as the fence because we only have an 8-foot ceiling in the accessory structure. So again, I don't have the exact dimension on me, but the approximate height of the top of the roof is about 9 feet because we have a flat low slope roof there. So it's effectively at the same height as the fence. It doesn't exceed that. So I don't believe so. Again, I don't want to put words in neighbors' mouths, but that would be my assessment.
All right. And I guess the last is the trees that are added, finding a species that doesn't extend above the roof line, I think would be obviously ideal. That you wouldn't want to deal with that years from now.
Yeah, I think that's something we heard is that there are concerns from the neighbors. You know, trees obviously get much bigger than the size they're planted at. And there's been some trees that have sort of grown into nuisances and, cut daylight out and become sort of problems. And we want to make sure we don't create that challenge down the road. So that's the 3 trees on the site that we felt really were specified as too large in our initial submittal. We're happy to bring down to a more reasonable scale.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Now we'll open up the hearing to the public. Each person is limited to 3 minutes and you cannot defer your time to anybody else. Please come up to the mic and state your name and address, please.
My name is Ron Najafi, 32 Mercury. So what I wanted to share with you is that the proposal as planned is to remove the retaining wall that's currently between a fence between 32 Mercury and 7 Apollo. And we have a pool in 32 Mercury that retaining wall, I'm sure it has some bearing to that pool. So removing that retaining wall and the fence has a potential problem. They are proposing that there's essentially a dispute in the property line as we have it. And we believe we have prescriptive rights to the current fence and current retaining wall and the pool that's sitting in our backyard. The approval, in my opinion, shall not move forward until the issue of fence and the property line and the fence and all of that is resolved. Since the pool house is not an ADU, there's no reason for it to be less than 4 feet from the rear of the property line. And right now it's attached to our property line. If you come over right now and take a look, we're back to back. There is no space in between. And I talked to Kieran, I suggested to have some space between the existing fence and the existing retaining wall so that there could be some plants put up that could prevent the, this view of the roof of the pool house. And we obviously want to welcome Kieran and his family to the neighborhood, but we like to make sure it's a property that doesn't take away value from our house. The pool house's current height is 9 foot, a 9-foot ceiling. We believe an 8-foot ceiling will be just fine for a pool house that somebody wants to go sit in and change or do whatever. An 8-foot pool house will push the size of the roof down. If you go back to some of the picture, would you be able to go back or not necessarily? Okay, back further. Okay, here, this is good. So,
Please use the microphone and you only have 18 seconds.
okay, so basically our house is adjacent to that end of the left side of the structure. That we propose bringing it down by a foot, leave some space between our fence and this structure. Also, the structure right in the middle, that is smack into the face of, as we come out of our backyard, it's right, huge thing. So Kieran has agreed to pick it back a little bit, lower it, but I think it's just huge. I don't know, it's like 15 feet. It's a behemoth, you know, in our eyes. The last thing I wanted to make sure is that the choice of tree is very important. As my mom enjoys the view, she goes into their backyard and looks at the mountains and the trees.
I'm sorry, your time has been.
And we want to make sure the trees that they plant is not going to be a redwood tree right in front of them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to continue. I'm also from 32 Mercury. My name is Alex Najafi. My mother lives there. She bought this property for the value of the view that it has of all the hills in the back. In Kieran's opinion, that view is not a view for him, but it's a view for us who look at it. So there is a discrepancy in the way they're describing what we think the value of the view is. Furthermore, I really don't see why something like that, what they call a feature wall, is really necessary to be smack coming at our view. It's really not necessary. It can be lowered to the height of their house and not be any taller than that, because it takes about 2 or 3 feet above the ridge line of their house and the pool house. And the pool house also, from their standpoint, is not above the fence. But when you come to the back of our property and look at the pool house line, the flagpole shows that it's higher than our fence. So that's going to create also another sort of blockage of the view. And the density of the house is, the house that they're building is much denser because it doesn't have a kind of a sort of a V shape or, so it's a much bigger volume that's coming behind our house and blocking our view. So in that regard, and plus the fence line not being determined because of the prescriptive easement that exists right now, which is our retaining wall for the pool, we're opposed to this plan going forward as it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there another member from the audience who would like to make a comment? Please state your name and address. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jim O'Neill. I'm at 5 Apollo, and we worked with Abe and Kieran and Tatiana talking things through over the last few weeks. And so a lot of the accommodations that Abe just laid out were things that we talked about. The only thing that I really have that we've also discussed that wasn't really mentioned tonight was the location of the pool equipment. It's very near the 3 bedrooms of our home. And the possible discussion was to move the pool equipment to the northwest corner, close to 32 Mercury. It's very close to the pool equipment at 32 Mercury, to where they would be right next to each other, further away from all the residents. And it can, kind of have all the equipment in the same corner and not affect everybody else. But other than that, a lot of accommodations were made, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who'd like to make us a comment? Okay, the applicant has 5 minutes.
Before we proceed, let's just check with
Oh,
our
sorry. Zoom.
Excuse me, if there's anyone on the Zoom call who would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and we will enter you into the room. I'm seeing no hands raised.
Okay. If the applicant could step forward, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
I first just want to express our appreciation for Jim and Moira at 5 Apollo. We did have a series of really thoughtful conversations. They invited us into their home, and it felt very neighborly. And I appreciate Jim getting up and sharing his thoughts regarding the pool equipment, as well as his appreciation for the sort of other compromises that we've laid out here. I think that's kind of the spirit of what we're trying to do, compromise. You know, these were things that initially, you know, Karen and Tatiana, you know, sort of felt like we're taking away from some of the things they had, but were the right decisions to make to sort of be neighborly, reducing the scale, thinking about views, thinking about daylight of the neighbors, thinking about kind of the materiality of the building. So I think we went into this process really kind of thoughtful to kind of the right choices to make. And that's why we did come today rather than to just simply present what we submitted, to sort of also present kind of directions that we are absolutely willing to go to sort of move this project forward. I'll make one point about the property line between the subject property and 32 Mercury. We did have it surveyed. The fence as it currently stands, I think Ron at 32 Mercury spoke to it a little bit. It actually is on 7 Apollo's property. At one point, it is into the property by about 4 feet. So it sort of makes the accessory structure feel closer to the property line than it actually is, because the existing fence line actually is really on 7 Apollo's property, and there's a retaining wall step there and the fence beyond it. So just some clarification on that and kind of what I think Ron was referring to, and the kind of location of the property line at the rear. Again, I just want to sort of express that, you know, sort of myself as the architect, but more importantly, Karen and Tatiana really have entered into this process kind of very kind of humble and sort of trying to be good listeners. I think we've done our best to do that and strike a balance of kind of meeting the needs of their family, but balancing it with the needs of the adjacent families in the neighborhood. So we've kind of attempted to do that, and that's why we came forward with some compromises, and we're open to any discussion or any additional questions you have about them.
Sorry, does anybody from the board have any further questions? The applicant, I actually do. That retaining wall, is it supporting the pool behind it? I don't understand that statement.
I doubt that it's directly supporting the pool. You know, it's certainly something that would be replaced by a new retaining wall.
Okay.
And if that is a concern of the neighbor, we can certainly, you know, sort of have an engineer look at it to make sure it's safe and stable. But, you know, I actually don't know how close that pool is to the property line, but I doubt that a wall that is 4 feet over the property line into 7 Apollo has a direct relationship to the structural integrity of the pool in the rear yard.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
No.
I had one. Just could you clarify what happens to this fence? What happens to the property line at the completion of the building?
So we would build the new fence at the property line. So it would move back. It ranges at the corners. It's about 1 foot. I think it's 1'4" over the property. It's different in each corner. I think it's 1'4" in one corner, and I don't know what it is, maybe 9 inches in the other. And then again, because it's trapezoidal at the center, it actually projects about 4 feet into 7 Apollo. So we would basically just rebuild it at the property line.
Staff, can you provide a position where how the review board needs to view property line disputes?
Well, the design review board is here to review the design of projects. That is what your role is to review designs. When we take in applications, and Christy, please correct me if I'm wrong, we do double check and look at surveys that are provided to the city as part of the application. And we take those are signed by licensed surveyors, and we take those for what they are. So your job here tonight is to look at the design of the project and comment, given the guidelines and other items that you're here to look at. When there is a property dispute, property line dispute, that's resolved somewhere else. That's resolved in other locations between those two private parties.
I just wanted to clarify that for the board. And then the second thing is footings. So if you have a retaining wall and you have a footing, which side of the property does that need to be on?
If the proposed retaining wall is located at the property line and the retaining wall is built by the applicants, the footing of that retaining wall has to be entirely within the subject property.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that for us. Appreciate that. Thank you. At this point, we will close the hearing to the public and we will deliberate amongst ourselves. Should we go left to right this time?
I think, oh, am I? Yeah. I would like to see if there could be some room or some movement with this feature wall, and lowering it. It does still has a quite presence of some mass with the neighbor. I think some of the other issues you've addressed and have made some, I think, excellent movement toward getting your neighbor's approval as well. That I think the trees that I mentioned earlier in this feature wall would be two areas that could be improved.
Okay, so delivering amongst ourselves. I don't want to get involved in the property line dispute, so that's why I asked you to clarify that. With regard to the accessory building, could you give us what the regulations say about accessory buildings? Is this considered an ADU or is this considered an accessory building? And how does it need to conform to the setback?
It is not an ADU, but please go ahead, Christy.
Okay. Yes, it is not an ADU, so it does not have to comply with the 4-foot rear and side setback requirement. It is an accessory structure. Accessory structure can be located in the rear yard, but not in the side and the front yard. The maximum of an accessory structure height is 15 feet. With the proposal is 10 foot something, so it's well below that 15 feet limit. The accessory structures in size cannot occupy more than 25% of the rear yard. In the staff report, we believe we provide that calculations in terms of percentage for the rear yard, and it's well below that 25%. The accessory structure has to be 3 feet away from the property line, which this project will provide.
Okay, thank you. So with regard to the accessory structure, because of its proximity to the fence line, my preference, I would like to see it at the same height as what we decide the fence is. So if, because it's so close to that fence line, if it's the top of it is at the top of the fence, I think I would like that. The second thing is it's clear that we need a better, more defined landscape plan. We need to know the species. We need to know what's going on. That's not very clarified. Another thing that we don't really understand are we see the list, the menu of changes, but we really need to see it in plan, and that's really important. Another thing is about the organizing wall. I have no problem with it. I think it's a fabulous feature, and it's a way to organize a party. I mean, it's clearly delineating between public and private space, and it's an aesthetic decision. So I some people might call it an eyesore, but it's an aesthetic decision. So, and I'm not sure, we shouldn't be just designing things for other people. Location of the pool equipment, I thought that was wise. The location, if we could think about ganging up all the pool equipments in the same location. So if there is a pool equipment over in that northwest corner, maybe you can just sort of keep it over there. That would sort of keep that as a hub for the pool equipment. So those are sort of my comments.
First of all, I'd like to say of all the buildings I've seen come through using this international style or Garrett Ritfeld style, this is probably the best one from a purely aesthetic standpoint. And I appreciate the effort that went into it. It's nicely scaled. The materials are subtle and warm. It'll be a really great addition to the neighborhood. That being said, I think the concrete wall is a little overbearing on the front. It's the scale of Apollo Street is dictated by a whole group of trees on both sides of the street. And then you come to this house and there's nothing. So I think you need to do some landscape work on the front, develop some tree cover that is aesthetically appropriate and doesn't have a view blockage characteristic to it, which may mean you just agree to prune it at a certain height. We have a 30-foot height limit in this town, and yet we're letting our trees grow to hundreds of feet in some cases. So it's a serious issue. And that neighborhood in particular has a whole cluster of redwood trees at some points that ought to be either removed or cut in half or something, another issue. The pool equipment definitely has to go in the backyard. You're going to have to put a concrete block wall around it to meet the sound requirements of the city or the town. And I'd agree. I think I would lower the ceiling height of the ancillary unit in the backyard. It's by my site, it's about a foot above the fence line.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to
So
figure out. Yeah.
if it's at the fence line or lower, we're fine with it. There's a drain back there that comes all the way down through the backyards, and it extends in between these two houses, these two streets, and you're going to have to accommodate that somehow. I don't know what it means when you cut it down, but I do think you're entitled to recapture the area of your lot by building retaining wall on the property line and then putting your fence on top of it, but make sure it's on your property, not on the neighbors. And a 4-foot retaining wall, or 3 or 4 feet, which this one will be, wouldn't cause any structural failure for a pool if it's done in a reasonable period of time and at the right time of the year, not in the wintertime. Your pool equipment should have sound absorptive material inside the pool containment. And I would remove some 2 feet or so of the concrete wall, that organizing wall as you're calling it. And it also take 8 inches to a foot off of the short stub wall in front that has the numeral on it. Other than this, and you made a comment that I think is not true, which is the high point of the ridge of the house versus the flat mass. When you put a flat house up there, it's got a lot more visual mass than just a ridge does. So you can't take that into account. You're a bigger house by far than the gabled houses of the area are. Other than that, I'd say I'd like to see this come back with those changes, and they're subtle, but I don't think we're talking any major damage to the building, but I do think it needs to have another look for us.
Okay. My only thing about the organizing wall is I like the compromise that you suggested. I don't know. I like that wall.
Well, I do too, but it's the wall is on just a slightly too small site, and when you look at it from the street, it's really close to the street. When you drive up and down Apollo Way, I did that several times, and it's going to be sitting right there. So I would like to bite a little bit off of it.
Okay. So we have opposing views on that. So, and then you
Not saying I thought that is a mass that is noticeable. It's present.
Yeah.
I don't mind the presence, but I see homes with like fencing right at the front. That's pretty offensive. That's actually more offensive than the concrete, I have to say. Okay, so anybody would like to make a motion as to
So we're just trying to figure out if we could have a date certain. So we're trying to look at this because I believe there might be some adjustments to story poles as a result of some of the reduction. So I probably can't go to the next meeting. So what meeting would it be after that, Christy?
So the meeting after the next meeting is going to be August 3rd.
August 3rd. Okay. How do we do this? We open it up back to the applicant for just to ask if they can be available for the August 3rd meeting.
We can, unless they are able to just, maybe indicate, yeah.
I know it's the middle of summer vacation.
Yeah.
What the architect.
Let's give the applicant a couple minutes
Yeah,
to look at
okay.
their calendar,
Sure.
and we'll all sit here a few minutes, or hopefully not a few minutes.
And we can maybe make a motion actually without having we'll put that at the end of our motion.
Well, sure, you could start doing that. It sounds like you have consensus on what issues, or at least the issues that you guys have all raised. So if there's anything else, I think you could start adding those together. But I wouldn't want you to make a motion until we get a little more clarity from the applicant.
Okay. Maybe while they're doing that, we can sort of consolidate all the different things. The location of the pool equipment was one. Yes and no on the organizing wall.
Reduce the scope of or scale of the organizing wall.
Reduce scale further than what they proposed.
Yes.
Yes and no on that. How about make sure that the plans include the proposed changes, all 12 of those changes.
Reduce the height of the ancillary building.
Reduce height of accessory. Is it ancillary or accessory building?
Accessory.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I have no idea. The plans need better definition. We need a better idea on species. Better definition of species and location of planting.
With height restriction of the house, of the roof, is that?
I'm okay with the proposed
Okay
plan.
with their proposed time.
Yeah,
All the way back then?
okay. So we have 5 things. Yeah, we have the pool equipment, we have the organizing wall, I'm sorry, this is not open up to the public. Sorry, we're deliberating amongst ourselves. The proposed 12 changes that were presented in the PowerPoint, the accessory building height to be matching the fence in the back, and then better definition of the landscaping plan. Planting and location.
You did, and just to add to that, I had a note that you had specifically talked about the trees in the front.
Yes.
So with the landscaping plan, it
With the
should
new
include
landscape plan,
the
it should
front yard.
Yeah.
Include trees in the front yard.
Okay. Okay. And can we get a nod, yes or no, about the date certain, if that works with the applicant, on August 3rd? Okay.
Okay. Perfect.
Anybody like to make a motion about the 5 items? I have it on my computer. I can make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is not
There's
open up to
no-
the public.
yeah.
The 5 items that we would like to see when the applicant brings back the application on August 3rd, which is a date certain. 5 items include the location of the pool equipment to be located near the 32 Mercury Drive pool equipment. The second is a reduction in the organizing wall. Include the 12 changes that were listed in the PowerPoint. Reduce the height of accessory building to the fence height, and better definition of the species and location of planting, which includes
Including
the trees in the front yard. Anybody would, I'm sorry, this is not open to the public. If somebody would like to second that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, and we can have a roll call vote, or not, we'll have a vote.
You can have a voice vote on that.
A voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None. Abstaining? None. So the motion will, the application will continue to August 3rd. Thank you. Next, sorry, I have to get my glasses out, is the 3rd item on the agenda. And that is the Paradise Drive one located on 2088 Paradise Drive. If the applicant can come to the front and you have 20 minutes to present your
Good evening. I'm Michael Heacock. I'm the architect for 2088 Paradise. I'm really excited to introduce you to Matt and Jan Matthews, your new neighbors at 2888, and I'm going to let them say a few words.
Oh, okay. Good evening. We have lived in Marin for about 35 years, and I'm an active cyclist, and I'm on Paradise Drive weekly. And we were really excited to find this property, and we're anxious to move to the neighborhood. We did an extensive amount of neighborhood outreach. And one of the benefits of that is we've made a bunch of new friends. And we listened to their comments. And one of the important things to them was to keep the views of Raccoon Straits from the sidewalk. And I really wanted a garage, a full garage like all the other properties on the street. But our architect and my wife talked me into a small shed next to the elevator that I'll have to keep my bikes and other sporting equipment. So I'll be having a big garage sale. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jan Matthews, and we're really excited about this property. We've worked with our team for 2 years to make the best design on a rather constrained site. You know, we do remodels of properties. That's been our business for ages. And so we've got a team that can do the job. And this is something that we never sell anything. When we do a remodel, it becomes like part of a family, and we're planning to move and live here. So we're excited about that. And I wish there was a way we could make everyone happy with every part of the design and all the steps of the design process to this point. But what we can promise is that we have the experience and the team that can get this remodel constructed with the highest quality and in the most efficient and time-sensitive way. And that's important to all the neighbors because I know they've had lots of other construction in the area. So, and we'll also commit to having ongoing communication with the neighbors throughout the process, because I know that's important with every job, everything we do. And we look forward to toasting the completion of the remodel with all our new neighbors and friends that we've made through this process. So thank you for your time on this. Appreciate it.
I don't want to forget to thank Christy for doing a great job on the staff report. Thank you, Christy. Just a couple more words about Matt and Jan. You may know the Mill Valley Lumberyard, which is their property that they recently remodeled. Well, I shouldn't say recently, it seems like it, but it's been 5 years ago that we finished that. You know, Matt has been a builder for 45 years and he couldn't do it without Jan. I can testify to that. This particular project, they built in 18 months. So the time span in which we do 28 Paradise was a concern with a lot of neighbors. And it hopefully is comforting to know that they could build 10 buildings, 17,000 square feet in 18 months. Another person you might want to know about just in terms of qualifications is our design build structural engineer, Beiruz. Nice photo of him. He's got a lot of experience building zero lot line structures, particularly in San Francisco. He also has maritime experience doing all kinds of projects in the Bay. Some of our critical path goals here for the project, preserving public views, as Matt said, providing new parking for this site that currently doesn't have any parking. And if you know that turn in Paradise, I'm sure you do, creating a safe turnaround from our site. We also wanted to make sure we did what we could to help the adjacent properties have a safe exit from their driveways and garages. We're putting in a new elevator to all 3 floors of the building so that Matt and Jan can recover from any knee replacements or hip replacements along the way. We're doing an ADU addition that's under that parking deck. Obviously we wanted to honor the hillside design guidelines because we are on such a steep site. We're raising the building out of the floodplain because we have to. We're reducing our carbon emissions by remodeling the existing building, and I'll go through a couple slides about that. The new building will also be environmental in that it will be a net zero electricity building, and that carport structure will house a 9 kilowatt photovoltaic system. We're doing gray water, rainwater, and notably, in case you weren't aware, there's the sewer agency has a large vault at the bottom at the beach that is about 2/3 of it is on our site. And I'll go through a little bit more about that in a minute. With regard to the hillside design guidelines, it was a critical part of our thinking as we started to design the building. Of course, primary views from the most adjacent structure, the 4-unit building at 2090. I'll talk about that extensively towards the end of the presentation. You know, I don't know if everybody else appreciates the hillside, and maybe I'm kissing up to Jim a little bit. He knows how much I like the hillside design guidelines. I wish every jurisdiction would adopt it in Marin. The one I'm going to talk about again at the end of the presentation is the one about borrowed views, and specifically to our most adjacent neighbor at 2090. If you look through the drawings, you've seen this comparison of the variances we're asking for in comparison to the adjacent neighbors. The project is in substantial conformance with the predominant pattern of development in this neighborhood. Each of these properties has 7 variances, which is the same number we're asking for. I'll go through some of those in a little more detail. If you read the variances carefully, we're on the small scale compared to some of these other adjacent properties, and you can kind of see that just by looking at the buildings nearby. I have all of our drawings in here. I'm not going to go through every sheet in detail because you've probably looked at them already. I'm going to come back to this demo sheet in a minute. We're saving 54% of the existing structure. Let's go on here. We did a shadow study, kind of the obligatory shadow study. We reviewed this with Noreen. Noreen and Paul are the adjacent neighbors at 2090. You know, the big takeaway here is really that the shadows that fall on 2090 are mainly from the hillside above both properties, and our building's relatively modest in scale compared to 2090. I will show you some elevations of some of the windows on 2090 that we're near. We have the site plan here. Of note for you all is that the dock is a separate permit item. It's not part of the review this evening. Story pole plan. Let's go on to some existing floor plans, new floor plans. I just wanted to make sure you all understand that crawl space down at the bottom at the beach level. That's where Matt's going to put what few toys we let him keep, his kayaks, his paddle boards. So, you know, having that finished crawl space down there is important for the beach toys and the things that don't fit in that small closet up by the street. The lower floor of the house is a studio. It's not a 1-bedroom, it's a studio. The second floor of the house here, the second unit, is a 1-bedroom. And then the ADU under the parking deck is a 2-bedroom ADU. I'll come back and show you some blown up versions of these elevations. I do want you to note on the bottom right corner that chimney on the existing house, because you're going to see it again in a few minutes. Let me see if I can use the pointer. I do want to point out here, this is the raised existing house, the side that faces the most adjacent neighbor 2090. And you'll note that we've removed all the windows from that side of the existing building. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. More elevations, some details. If you want to talk about it, we can come back to this. We've got our civil plans. Let's talk just a minute about sea level rise. I like this cartoon because I'm going to read it. Slowly boiling in a pan from left to right, slowly boiling in a pan. This is a pot. Oh, it's a kettle, damn it. So I think that's appropriate for, you know, certain things that end up getting discussed in terms of secondary views and things like that. So what I'd love to be talking about is sea level rise and what we should all be doing about it. I'd love to talk about how we're going to make these buildings carbon neutral. So I'll mention some of that because I feel it's important. There's 3 studies that we reference with regard to sea level rise and why we're raising the existing building 6 feet. The Tiburon study, you know, it's okay. It's a bit dated at this point. I think it's 2016. It's got some numbers in it. I actually like this updated Stinson study by the county a little bit better. I don't recommend buying property in Stinson. And if you have some, you might want to sell it because in about 50 years, your building might still be there, but your septic system won't be functioning anymore. This is what it'll look like, which is just sort of an aside from our conversation tonight. But here's something more appropriate, which is this multi-agency study. I like this one because it's easy to read. They have one chart in there that kind of says it all. I've kind of circled it down here. Let me point to it. You know, 2070, that's a little less than 50 years off. The general kind of thought is that we're going to be somewhere around 5 to 7 feet higher in terms of sea level rise. Now you also have to consider storm surge, you have to consider tidal waves, you have to consider, you know, the combination of everything at once. But so we're raising that existing lower floor of our building 6 feet from where it is currently. And I'll talk about how the actual change in roof height from the existing ridge is only 1 foot 10 inches from what's there now. So I'll get into a little bit more detail about that. I do have firsthand experience of sea level rise based on this building I designed. Oh gosh, it's been a while, 2006. This is on Paradise Drive, 5164 Paradise. This is the backyard in 2006. This is the backyard in 2019, 15 years later. And now we're what, 4, 5, 6 years past that. So, you know, it's happening faster than we'd all like to think. With regard to the heights, I'm just going to highlight a few things here. It's a little hard to read on this projection, but here's where we're raising the existing floor level 6 feet. Keep in mind, when you raise that floor level, you got to think about we're raising the top, the subfloor essentially, the top of the floor 6 feet. The FEMA measurements are from the bottom of your supporting structure under that, okay? And so the net add that we have to do is, you know, somewhere around 4.5 feet in order to get above that minimum FEMA level. Also, if you look carefully here, there's a couple of red lines. That red line right there, that red dash line, that's the existing ridge line of the existing house, okay? And our new floor level, which is the ADU floor level and the roof of the existing building, the new roof of the existing building, the difference there is 1 foot 10 inches. So what we've really tried to do here is be as thoughtful and considerate to the adjacent 4-unit building by not going too high with it. Just a bit on carbon emissions. How do we reduce our carbon footprint? I love this comparison because I think everybody can understand it. If everyone in the world lived the way you and I do, we would need 5 Earths to support us, okay? And we have 1. So here's why that's pertinent. We're reducing the carbon footprint of our construction project by 30% by remodeling the existing building. Okay, as opposed to building new. Now we're retaining 54% of the building. On the left side, you see, here's the project we're proposing to do this remodel. We're saving 27 metric tons of carbon from going into the atmosphere by remodeling this building, compared to the right side, which would be a total of 92 metric tons going into the atmosphere. In addition to doing the remodel, we're doing this 9 kilowatt photovoltaic system. In that closet, Matt's going to have a hard time fitting all of his bikes because we're also putting a car charger and a Tesla Powerwall so that when the power's out, he still has electricity to run the building. We're doing gray water reuse, this hydroloop system. I'll tell you about it if you want to know more. We're also doing rainwater storage. These are called water hogs. They're a vertical storage tank. You can gang them together. And then let's talk about the neighbors for the last 5 minutes. Here's our neighbor, the sewer agency on the west side, okay? This is just to demonstrate that Matt has a great relationship already with Tony down there at the sewer agency. They are allowing us to relocate the pipes that are on our side of the property line. We obviously cannot relocate the sewer or the vault that is also substantially on our property line. In addition to remodeling this building and raising it, we cannot shift the building sideways as the neighbor at 2090 would like us to do because we have this sewer vault. We have to maintain access by the sewer agency to the sewer vault, and that's part of the reason for the design of the stairs. The other neighbor adjacent is 2090. We've met with Noreen twice. I've met with Noreen twice over the last year. You know, I know she's expressed some concerns and worries. You know, I have this letter that has been submitted to you from Beirut, our design build structural engineer, that's explaining more why we cannot slide the building sideways. It's relatively easy to jack it up. Moving it sideways is not feasible. The cost is really high. It takes months longer. The building may not be able to withstand something like that. So there's lots of reasons why we're not shifting it to the side. A little bit of history, 2090. Our building was built in 1939. You can see from the photo here, there is the adjacent building 2090 under construction after ours has been there 20 years. Another photo, I'm going to point out these kitchen windows. Kitchen window number 2, we're going to look at a photo out of that in a second. Kitchen window number 3, these are the windows that Noreen took me to and asked me to be considerate of those windows. You can also see primary views of the bay out these windows and another 4 windows over here, which we are not blocking. There's a model view. You can see the same windows here. We are not blocking those. I'll show you a side view in a minute. That's window number 3 out of the 3rd floor. I'll show you in a second. Here are the windows, existing windows from the neighboring building that we are not blocking. We stepped the building back. We stayed under the maximum height limit with the raising of that existing building. One of our variants is a height variance for this ADU and the parking deck, which is this little piece up here. I wanted to give you the distances between the 2 buildings. So up on top is 2090. This is our new footprint here. I dotted in the existing chimney, which I'm going to show you out the window for from 2090 here in a second. The big takeaway here is I want to make sure you all understand these buildings are about 5 feet away from each other already, okay? When you get up to this 3rd floor kitchen window, which I'll also show you, our ADU is set back 4 feet from the property line as required by the state law. At that point, it's 7 feet 10 inches, almost 8 feet between the 2 buildings, okay? I'll show you where that kitchen steps back, and it's actually going to be 12 feet 4 inches between the 2 buildings, okay? Here's the 3rd floor kitchen. This is the one that steps back. So this window, here's the view from that window. I took this photo looking across our site. Obviously, this is before story poles. This is going to be 7 feet 10 inches from our ADU wall. This is where her building steps back from the corner right here. It's going to be 12 feet 4 inches away from our building. Here's the 2nd floor window. I've got 2 pictures. They're kind of the same thing, but one was kind of glary, so I gave you 2. This is the existing chimney and flue out that 2nd floor kitchen window. Same window, same view, just a little bit clearer for you. I will point out here, here's that ridge line right here. The new roof of that existing building is 1 foot 10 inches higher than this existing ridge. If you turn your head 90 degrees in both of these kitchens, this is your view. Some considerations we've already made in our design is to preserve all of the primary views of the bay and Angel Island for 2090. Our building steps back with the hillsides in consideration of the hillside design guidelines. The absence of our garage is safer for 2090 cars backing into the street. And I forgot to mention on our site plan, our vehicles do not have to back into the street. The reason the parking deck is designed the way it is so they can back up on the driveway. Sorry, let me finish this. Our raised floors are 2 to 3 feet lower than the adjacent floors at 2090. That helps privacy. Our bedroom egress windows are 12 feet away. So the only windows that face 2090 are 12 feet away. A few things, our light are stuck over flex natural light. We've got some offers of mutually agreeable plants. We'll upgrade the adjacent storm drain coming from the street. If you don't like our color palette, we have an alternate.
Time has now lapsed. I'm sorry.
Okay.
At this point, we will open it up for the public to comment. Oh, actually, do we have any questions for the applicant? Sorry. Or the staff from the board? Jim?
One question. This is a really steep slope, so it's got to be mostly rock, but is it serpentine you're dealing with?
Yeah, there's a lot of rock on there. Yeah, that's right.
All right, so
yeah.
Okay, great. At this point, we'll open up to the public. If you could come up and state your name, you have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Only one affected by the, yeah. Hi, Noreen Slavan, and we own 2090 Paradise. I agree, it's a very beautiful design, but unfortunately, we are the only building that's affected by it. And we're affected by it pretty greatly because the building existing is a foot from the property line, and the upper mass is also going to be a foot behind the property line. And that's really our main concern. The ADU and those other spaces are moved back to 4 feet, and we're fine with that. It's really the upper added mass above the main building that is in front of that one kitchen window. Anyway, we just felt like there really hasn't been. We did meet twice, and the first time we looked at it, I brought him up to show him those things. And I pointed out that ironically, the only, even though you don't think they're important, the only important windows to us are those 2 kitchen windows, and not so much as for water views, which they do have now. It's really more for natural light and air. And at 1 foot away from the property line, there's no natural light and air. And in our mind, it's also not a safe situation. I expect to lose any water views that we might have had and tree views. And that's just the way it goes. But we had assumed that either they'd fix it, there'd be a new building that came out of the setback, or in this case, we're fine with new mass and keeping the existing foundation, especially because now we're being told it can be reused. Initially, we were thinking, even 1 foot over would be nice to give us a little bit more of space for construction more than anything. But if it means saving time and money to leave the foundation in at that 1 foot setback. But my experience has been for new mass, it should be stepping in. And our hope was from day one that any new construction above they're using the base of the line, but this new wall will be they're 1 foot. So any distance is the space on our property. So 1 foot from their property line. Our concern, and I was going to read this, but I didn't. So I'm sort of proud of myself, I guess. The issue there is I really didn't think that we would even have to come before you with this concern. I assumed either the fire department or the town wouldn't sign off on a new mass a foot from our property line and just a few feet from our building, especially this kitchen window. One, as I said, selfishly, I don't want to put curtains on my kitchen windows, and no one wants to be open and closing. But more importantly, let's say there's a fire. Someone I know in town just had a kitchen fire. That's where there's going to be fire. And that's why we figured the fire department wouldn't sign off of this. I'm not sure if it was an oversight. And if there was something like that, there'd be no access for emergency or for water even to get to the building there, because we're so very tight. We will be so very tight together at that where the original building is. The ADU and the new mass is further back, and they're proposing a 4 foot setback for that. We did talk about this when we met the first time, and I pointed out at that point, yes, that ironically, the only mass proposed was in front of those 2 windows. And while they keep talking about the hillside design in the front of the building, if you look along the beach there,
Chair Kim,
there is no other houses at that level, and we have no We don't care at all if
Thank
they
you.
block our front windows.
Thank you.
And that was explained.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Brad Hubble.
I'm sorry, one second, while they reset the clock. Okay, great.
Good evening, I'm Brad Hubble, Hubble Daily Architecture and Design. I'm here to represent Noreen and Paul, the neighbors at 2090. And they're the most immediate neighbors. While the Matthews and Michael Heacock have done a great job proposing a structure that will enhance the neighborhood on a whole, there has been a lack of consideration that we feel that's more importantly a dialogue between themselves and Noreen and Paul. Noreen and Paul have raised issues that we feel have not been addressed and communications have not been as clear as we would like for that dialogue. We're requesting that the design review board consider a continuance of this project for two reasons. One, to have a proper dialogue with Noreen and Paul, and two, to provide a greater step back of the structures with that mid-level, that would be the level underneath the ADU, in such a manner as to allow greater light, air, and more importantly, the fire safety element that Noreen referred to. Ideally, the setback would be to the same line as the ADU wall above. But please consider that Noreen and Paul's property really is the most greatly affected by these improvements. And as I said, it's going to be an enhancement for the neighborhood. It's fantastic that it's making use of and preserving views. We just request that there be greater communication to ensure that the concerns of Noreen and Paul are adequately addressed with the applicant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who'd like to speak? Please come up.
Hello.
I'm sorry, we need to reset the clock.
Okay.
I suggest you just proceed and we can keep time while they figure out.
Okay, thank you.
For the next one.
Thank you. Please,
Hi,
please proceed.
I'm Susan Kreitz and I live very close to the new house too. And I don't think we have met, but it's nice to meet you. I was apparently one of those people that wasn't reached out to. So my concerns with the house are not that it's not beautiful. It is a beautiful house. And I'm glad that they did preserve the view of Raccoon Straits at the street level. And there are a number of other houses on our block who have done that successfully as well. And I want to say that my concern is for the ecology of the area. And I noticed in the plans that there is some overhang of their property onto what is now the sewer property. And I don't know whether it was done that way because it's a compromise or something. If they have to move the sewer lines, maybe they said, okay, you can hang over. But there's a beautiful oak tree there. And that is one of the very, very few spots in the densely built area there on Paradise Drive where there is actually a place where animals can go. And we do have a river otter who comes in and out of that area. So I'm concerned about the care and safety of the tree. I noticed that when the story poles went up, the oak tree was just hacked off. And I noticed later they came in and they did cut the, smooth it off and put something to help the tree. But I just want to make sure that if they have an elevator, I'm not understanding why they have to have a wide enough staircase that it would encroach upon that natural area, and why the staircase couldn't be just a little bit more narrow so that we can preserve this, even though it seems kind of like not a very lovely open space. It still is an open space and it's still used by the animals in the area. And I certainly do enjoy that big oak tree. So that is my concern. Also, my second concern is that if they're going to have an ADU and they're only going to have 2 parking places, the building I live in doesn't have a garage, and it is very difficult to find parking. And so I'm wondering if they can have a designated spot for an ADU so that we don't have to have additional cars having to use the space that's there, because we are all the way to parking more than at least a quarter mile away almost on sometimes when everybody's home and when all the people who live in the area are there. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Robert.
Oh, one second. Okay, thank you.
Yes, I'm Robert Houghton, architect, a neighbor resident, and first hello to the board and to the design review group. And what I'd like to do is just go through a quick sort of final look at this in terms of what kind of a corner we got into with some of the issues and how it plays out in relation to the laws and the way we can go forward from here. The basic issue then is, well, one through 5, I think the project is well designed, the reuse is very well done, and the project appears to conform to building envelope, entitled dimensions, et cetera. And then going down to looking at the more detail of what we're discussing, and is the point of discussion, is that the applicant requests a reduced setback in variance VAR 2022003, reduced left side setback. And this is necessary to sustainably reuse the existing foundation and structure according to the professional engineer. Now, also the state allows for a 4-foot setback and a lot of other advantages for ADUs. So strict application of the left side setback would deprive the applicant of privilege enjoyed by others in the vicinity, including the adjacent lot at 2090 Paradise, through variance file number DR 2022-02. In other words, 2090 has gotten the variance to be on the property line, and then they're saying that 2088 can't get a variance to be anywhere near the property line. So that's not looked upon by the way the laws are set up here and the intentions of the laws. And then further, the Planning Commission finds granting the variance request for reduced left side setback would not be considered as a special privilege. So number one, other people have gotten that advantage. Number two, it's not considered to be a special privilege. And I don't have a picture of it, but you remember the one of the looking from the water. The 2088 building is stepped back from the 2090 building as it goes up. And there's quite a bit of space there that's allowed, and it's all on the side of, mostly all on the side of 2088. Thanks much for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have anyone else from the public? Please come forward. If you could wait 2 seconds for the clock to reset. Okay, we will use a manual clock. Thank you. Please proceed.
I'll be brief. Basically amplifying the points I made in my letter. Live at 2129 Paradise, have since 85. That's about a half a block away on the uphill side. And first I want to compliment the applicants, haven't met them before, but I want to compliment the applicants for their outreach, both in the letters to the neighborhood, but especially the renderings at street level. Anyway, looking at the proposal, I know there are a lot of setback variances that are required for this property. They've been certainly put in place in other properties along that way, especially 2070 most recently. But overall, I think the design is stunning. I think if you looking at it from especially the water view, and what's been going on in that stretch of road for a block from there to the Lyford Tower, It's a very thoughtful design. I understand the impacts on the 2090 neighbors, but frankly, I don't know. The views that are being impinged upon are not, and I had to deal with this years ago with my design, are not primary, they're secondary. And I think the architect appears to me to have been very thoughtful about trying to minimize any impact. And frankly, I don't know how they could do a better job. So bottom line is we're totally in favor of the design and wish them best of luck.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who'd like to make a comment? Thank you.
My name's Guy Chambers. I'm a retired architect. I live at 2398 Mar East. I could not imagine a more appropriate project on this particular site. I think that the architect and the owner have done a staggeringly beautiful job to try and preserve that old house, that old structure. That's locked them, that decision in and of itself has locked them into a position on the site where they're adjacent to the sewer on one side, and they've got a neighbor on the other side that has a very large house or a series of apartments. I think that the architect has done a very good job stepping the profile of the building back to preserve as many of those windows as possible. I think other people have talked about the fact that they preserve the views of Angel Island. I walk downtown all the time. I think it's a very appropriate and elegant solution. The fact that we have another opportunity for an accessory dwelling unit, where I know the city of Tiburon is going through very difficult issues relative to trying to meet the state requirements. I think on the whole, architecturally, it's very elegant. It's very nicely designed. And I think that there's the one fact that a window in the kitchen of the adjoining apartment is blocked. At the same time, that they've done a very, very good job trying to step the profile of the building back to allow all of the primary rooms to have unobstructed views, I think is a very, very nice concession to the owner of the property to the north. As to the issue of whether there's in fact a fire hazard because of the adjacency to the property lines, I think that that's something that's very, very easily mitigated through whatever wall construction and assembly the building department and or the fire department would like to see because of the adjacency to the property line. So I think that's basically a non-issue. The fact that they've taken the windows out of that accessory dwelling unit that potentially could have faced to the north, I think has eliminated that as a potential hazard. And I think on the whole, what you're looking at is a project that is in fact very, very consistent with and actually quite modest relative to other developed properties in and along Paradise Drive. And I think because of all of those considerations that have been and accommodations that have been made, I would expect a reasonable design review committee to take all of these considerations and give it a unanimous approval.
Thank you. Please come forward.
Hi, I live at 2150 Mar East, and parking is quite the option these days, and they're adding that, which is a big plus. And I think all the moves they've made have been very considerate to the neighbors. And I fully support what they're doing. And thank you very much.
What's your name?
Bill Schwartz.
Thank you.
My name is Ann McIntyre, and I'd like to read a letter on behalf of Paige and Ted Thomas, who couldn't be here today. We are writing in support of the proposed remodeling plans for 2088 Paradise Drive by Matt and Jan Matthews. We've lived at 2044 Paradise, 3 lots down, for 7 years and are excited by the upgrade to the area that this project promises. We have viewed the plans for the site at length and are impressed by how much care and consideration have gone into making it fit seamlessly into the neighborhood. While the building will be an enormous improvement over what is currently there, both visually and from a safety perspective, it will not overwhelm the space. As parking is a major concern in the area, the fact that this home will now have ample parking with safe entry and exit is a huge plus. In addition, we appreciate that the view of the bay and Angel Island will be preserved so that neighbors and other passersby can still enjoy it when out on walks. My husband and I have known the Matthews family since our daughters, now 30, were in preschool. And we can honestly say that this is one of the nicest families we have ever known. Over the years, we have watched several of their building projects go from seed idea to beautiful completion, including their homes in Mill Valley and Trinity Lake and the iconic Mill Valley Lumberyard. The Matthews do work with the utmost integrity, great attention to detail, and with clear regard for minimizing environmental impact. Their commitment to preserving the historic feel of buildings, reusing, repurposing materials rather than tearing down and starting over is not only beautiful, it's also most environmentally sound. All of their work is of the highest quality, and Matt knows how to get construction done in the most efficient and timely manner possible. For example, the major renovation of Mill Valley with the 10 large buildings was completed in a year and a half. In the 7 years we have lived here, my husband and I have witnessed and yes, endured noise and disruptions of many construction projects. The fact that the Matthews have so much experience and a proven track record of building efficiently, cleanly, and in a timely manner makes this project all the more desirable. In addition to their construction acumen, we have always known the Matthews to be the very best neighbors and community members. We are certain that their project and presence will be a welcome addition to the neighborhood, and we hope that you will enable them to start work as soon as possible. Sincerely.
Is there anyone else from the public who'd like to make a statement?
Hi, good evening. My name's Ernie Ware. I live at 2096 Paradise Drive, which is 2 houses adjacent to Jan and Matt's project. And I just wanted to underscore, I'm not as eloquent as the people that have been up here before me, but I'm really impressed by this project. And I just think it's fantastic. And I hope that they get approval and can move forward quickly with this project. I did want to point out something that I especially enjoy and like about their design is the removal of part of the concrete guardrail that's at that corner, because I think everybody knows about that corner. And there's a lot of dog walkers, bicyclists, people with strollers, and that corner is a pinch point. And by having them remove that guardrail, you are going to be able to see going around that corner much, much better. And I think it's going to make it safer. And so anyway, I would also encourage, I don't know if it's possible while they're doing that work, maybe if the city or the town of Tiburon can maybe help them in some ways with removal of the rest of the guardrail, the concrete structure, and make that sidewalk a little bit wider where the sanitary district is. That would maybe make that even more safe. So anyway, good luck with your project. I endorse it. And thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Is there anyone else from the public who'd like to make a statement? Okay, should we check online?
If there's, excuse me, if there's anyone online that wishes to speak tonight, please raise your hand using the raise hand function, and I will let you into the meeting. I am seeing none.
Okay, at this point, if the applicant would like to spend 5 minutes to address any comments or concerns, or just to make any other statement, please do so. 1 second while she resets. Great, thanks.
Can we bring up the rest of the slideshow? While they're doing that, I just wanted to mention that we are not in any way, shape, or form encroaching on the sewer agency site. The new stair will be on the property line, but we are not encroaching in any way. And we are just as interested as everyone else in preserving those oak trees and maintaining habitat for all the wild animals there. Where I left off, I just wanted to mention, I know that there's some sensitivity to colors, and we were proposing a fairly light stucco color. We did develop this alternate palette. So if the lighter tone of stucco was too bright, too offensive, we're absolutely willing to compromise. We wanted to give you a second option here. So most of it's the same. I didn't mention this before, but we do also have an option to clad the elevator. So if you're looking at the elevation and it seems a little like too much stucco, we can clad that elevator with the same stone we're cladding the stair with, and that would break up that mass a little bit. So it's kind of an either or, where we prefer this option A, but if you like a little more color and a little bit more broken up, we could also go for option B. This is a colored version with that second color option. You can see here the elevator tower clad in the stone kind of breaks up this mass a little bit more. I don't know how much you'd really see it, honestly, because it's kind of behind the oak trees, but there it is. Overall conditions of approval, I'm not going to do your job for you, but these are a few things I thought about. The sewer agency needs to approve the plans prior to permit issuance. Public Works needs to approve the storm drain line and dispersal, which needs to be dealt with because it's just sort of running amok on a surface drain between the two buildings. We would need to submit a traffic control plan to deal with traffic during construction. Public Works would approve the curb cut and the retaining wall remodel. You might want to specify trash and recycle bins will be concealed within an enclosure. We do have space for that. There's the stucco and stone options I just mentioned with the elevator. And then I would recommend you make it a condition of approval that Matt and Jen invite us all over for an open house. Our planner, Sean, recommended that we mention this. The proposed project is consistent with the development pattern in this neighborhood from the perspectives of parking views, aging in place, minimal impact, energy and water use. This project represents a positive hillside case study for contributing to the city's housing stock. There's one more correction I'd like to make in the last 2 minutes, and that's with regard to the distance between 2090 and our project. The distance right now is 4 feet 11 inches for the majority of the space. With regard to a fire hazard, there is no change in that distance. The existing building would be simply raised up. There's no change. There is no fire hazard. I understand somebody might be concerned about this. Where we are providing egress windows at the back bedrooms of 2 of our units, that's 12 feet 4 inches from 2090, 12 feet 4 inches away, okay? Those will have fire egress. They will be safe exit paths. The fire department will be able to serve the building. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the adjacency of the 2 buildings or views or any of that.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you some questions. I can't tell in the plan where that window is, the kitchen window, in relationship to that plan.
One of these 2 windows?
Yeah, in plan, and how that works with your plan.
Right, so here's our footprint.
Yes.
Here's the ADU wall 4 feet off.
Yeah, but I need to know the program underneath. Sorry, the program. So the floor plan instead of a roof plan. Do you have a floor plan that that shows that adjacency? Sorry.
We have to go back a ways here.
Yes.
So here's our floor plans. This is the lowest floor of the existing
Yeah,
building.
Yep.
That second floor kitchen window is adjacent to our, it's 2 feet, 2.5 feet higher than our third floor. The existing chimney is right about here. And so her kitchen window is almost 5 feet away, right up here where the laser is.
Okay. So, okay, because I'm just trying to see, like, I understand the view. I mean, they're barred views, but I'm just trying to understand, like, plan wise, like what potential there is for a greater light well. So.
Right. And what difference would it make, I guess, is the way that I've thought about this. You know, right now you have about 5 feet to that chimney, from the face of her window to the face of the chimney, right? It's going to be a stucco wall there with no windows on our side. If you move it a foot away, does that make a difference? 2 feet away? Does it make any difference from where it is now at 5 feet? And so that's kind of where I'm at with it compared to tearing down our whole building and building new.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else have any questions?
No.
I just want to clarify again, the wall does not move from its current location on the property line. That's correct?
We're just raising everything 6 feet.
A change. That's what I
And, and don't forget, the roof structure, instead of being a pitched roof, is now that flat roof deck for the ADU, 1 foot 10 inches higher than the existing ridge with glass railings.
I have another question. On sheet 8300, the north elevation. Yeah, that one. Can you show approximately where that window is?
The second floor kitchen window of 2090 is right there. And so the head of that window is pretty much the same level as that roof deck.
The guardrail?
The guardrail, the bottom of the guardrail or the top of the roof deck. So, you know, if
there
you
is light coming in through then that glass. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Any sunlight is coming straight in.
Okay.
And we have agreed to put mutually agreeable plants along that guardrail. We've offered that to Noreen as well. You know, pretty much whatever plants she wants, as tall as she wants, or vines or whatever.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Maybe I'll mention also, we've agreed to do tile mosaic on the wall outside the kitchen windows, do something creative, do a nice piece of artwork so that it's not just a blank wall.
Sorry, Jim.
Just, we are not discussing it. It's not for us to talk about the sewer line approval. Is that correct?
No, we can't discuss that. It's not part of our purview. Yeah. Okay, well, then at this point, if there's no other further questions, we'd like to close it off to the public and discuss amongst ourselves. So three of us can discuss our thoughts. So should we start?
Go ahead, Jim.
I think this is a really good example of what you can do in a rough spot, and it's probably sets this new standard for all of this part of our waterfront in Tiburon. It's a shame that so many buildings were overbuilt on the site before we got to this point, but you've done a remarkable job of doing what an architect is supposed to do, and I think it's a lovely building. I still have a few comments. Wouldn't be an architect without it. First of all, I'd like to just say that the street view is more important to Tiburon than a lot of other parts of the building. And you've kept it, and I'm delighted to see that. I wish more buildings had or would take down their garages. The oak tree is important, and a nice job of saving that. And I recognize you're going to need to prune a branch there. I think the white bothers me still. We're not in a true Mediterranean climate. We have a lot of trees and green space on our hillsides. You've got some right next to you. And to put a white building right next to an oak tree, to me, is not doing what we should do with our buildings, which is to camouflage them into the hillside, not try to make them stand out on the hillside. So I'd like to see you go darker on your stucco. And I think your idea of making the rock face of the stairs climb up that wall, I'd take it over that whole wall rather than just the elevator portion of it. But I think that's a good touch. The building codes will take care of the adjacency with regard to fire. I mean, you're gonna have to put a 2-hour wall there, I think, on that side. And I recognize that you're blocking 2 windows from the apartment house next door, but you're saving all of their primary views beautifully by stepping back. And I think that's more important. So I don't have any problems with approving the house as is, even with all of the variances, which I understand are necessary on this site. I could make the findings just because they allow all of the other successes to go ahead. I don't have anything else to say except the dock is out too far. You know,
Board Member Malat, the
It's
dock
not
is
part of
not
this.
part of this, and I don't want
The dock is
the
not
dock
part
is
of
not
it?
part of this design project.
it is
so,
not.
Why is that?
It's a separate permit.
Yeah, so it's not part of this
Okay,
design project.
So it's not going to be approved on this.
No,
No,
that's
it's not
correct.
part of this
Fine.
approval.
I think I'll quickly say, I would echo many things that Jim just said. Very, very impressive design. And I think I also would pick color plan B. I like the color. I love the idea of you adding texture and design that you talked about on that plain wall. Other than that, I think it's a beautiful structure.
I think Jim and I clash all the time on color. So I actually don't mind the lighter palette actually, and I do like the idea of the rock on the stair side actually. I think you did as good as you could possibly do on this site. This is like a very, very difficult site. It's like Tetrising in like the most impossible building. But I do wonder, just that one side that's facing the other side, 2090, that one blank facade. I mean, it's just a straight monotonous wall. I'm wondering if there could be a little bit more articulation right there. I'm not sure how or what that would sort of look like, but I feel like that one wall, if there's something that could be done there, that just to make it a little bit more, I don't know, articulation, and it would help with the lighting. Even a foot, I don't know. I'm not sure what that could translate into. I see that there's a pantry right there, and maybe it's not the pantry, but it's the kitchen. I'm not sure how that could be accommodated, but I mean, you're protecting their views. I mean, their primary views. So it's a little thing, but I know that the kitchen, like just the light quality of light is like so important. So that's just my only comment, is seeing if there's any more articulation that can be done on that blank wall. It's such a nitty little thing, but that's something. So we try to make a motion. Someone try to make a motion to what?
I think you guys need a little more discussion.
Yeah, about the variances. There's 7 variances.
Yes.
Can we make the findings for all the variances? So maybe should we try to go through each of the variances?
I mean, that's up to you, Chair Kim. I think you're able to talk about the variances in general and express that you find that they all are there. If you feel like there's a need to go into detail on them, then that is up to you as the chair to lead us through that.
Yeah, let's go through. Let's do our due diligence right now and go through each of the variances. The first is a variance for a reduced front setback. And can we make a finding that could support? Could we support the findings that we could accommodate or approve a variance for the front setback?
I can make those. I could make those findings based on the fact that the lot, if you look at it, is in an encumbered place adjacent to a street. And I think it's fairly easy to make the findings that this is a special circumstance for the lot, and other properties in the area have received a similar variance.
Okay. Great. And maybe we can work on all the three accompanying setback variances, both on the rear, north, and the side setbacks. Maybe we'll take the rear one and the north side front.
The street side.
And then the north is the.
Here's your property. There's the north arrow. So north is this way. There's the street.
But that's the same thing as a front setback.
So the north should be the one facing 2090.
Oh, that's what you're doing.
Oh,
okay.
that's
all right.
what
Okay. So she's shifted it. So reference north.
Okay. So I think we probably can make the findings if the board agrees with me for the reduced front setback for the front, rear, and the south sides. Question is, can we make the findings for the north side, which is adjacent to the property?
I think the adjacent property has already taken advantage of that to such a degree that it almost forces this design to be used, to use its side yard setback. Otherwise, you're taking so much of the property away from it that's very difficult to see how they would use their existing building constructively.
Okay, so we can make the findings.
I can make the findings.
And same variance other people have had.
Okay, and then for the excessive lot coverage, where a maximum 35 and it's at 64.4.
This is a cliff.
Yeah. Have a given.
It changes the rules.
Yep. And then the variance for the excessive building height, where a maximum of 30 feet is allowed. And I think part of it is part of the heights actually created by the ADU. So we can't count that. So could we make a finding for that? I think so. I think we can support the findings for that. The excessive wall height within the south setback, where a 6-foot wall is allowed within the setback. I think that's clear because it's just so steep. That's a very unusual site. The floor area exception of 1,867 square feet, including 1,000 square foot ADU. I'm sorry, I don't understand that phrase. I thought we can't count the square foot of an ADU.
So the ADU is part of the proposal because it will exceed the maximum height of 30 feet. Okay. And it will be also assessed in size with 1,000 square feet. So the ADU is counted as all the variants and 4 exceptions.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I think the massing is pretty appropriate.
Massing is appropriate for the site, and it steps down the hillside, which is in conformance with our design guidelines. So I would say,
and also, compared to the neighbors, adjacent neighbors, it's
not overbuilding the site.
No, it's not. So we can make. Here we have 8 variance requests, not 7. So I think we can make the findings for all 8 of them. The question is, do we accept it as is, or do we put any conditions on this?
I don't see any conditions that we need to put on it. I frankly, with this degree of sensitivity, the issue of color for me is one of, I think it's important for the town to look appropriately itself, but I'm not going to make an issue out of it. I'd approve it as is.
I also would approve it as is.
I would like to see it come back with that articulation of that one side.
I don't see that.
I don't think I would make them come back for that.
I'd rather see them do some decorative elements on that side as they suggested at their proposal. And it could be tile, it could be a mural, it could be just material changes, but I think I'd trust the
staff to approve it.
Well, Well, I just want to let you know that staff had not prepared a draft resolution for this project. It will come back with a resolution to address all your findings on the variance and exception request.
Okay.
Okay.
So no conditions then,
I wouldn't put any conditions on it.
even on the blank wall, not even.
Not even on a blank wall. It's not, no, the artwork is something that's so personal and you could work it out between the parties. They seem to have a good level of communication, so.
I guess I would agree to giving them the latitude to improve the texture, artwork, whatever range that would be. I think you'd have to give them some artistic freedom.
Maybe the condition is that there's some kind of something on that wall, though. I mean, seriously, like,
okay,
just leaving it blank, I'm not sure.
Let's require that they put an artistic element on that wall.
Okay, somebody want to try to make a motion about the variances?
So the, you don't have to.
We're
do
gonna
the full
continue.
motion. So the motion is to direct staff to come back with a draft resolution for approval, given your discussions on the findings tonight.
Given the discussion on the findings and also an additional condition dealing with the blank wall, to provide some type of articulation or artwork or something on that blank wall.
And it can be returned in the next meeting on July 20th.
Okay. So someone want to make a motion?
So I would move that we approve the project with the conditions.
Sorry, Jim,
subject to CEQA.
No, I'm sorry, Sam. Board Member Malat, the motion is to direct staff to bring back a motion, and then however.
Bring back the resolution.
Yes.
For adoption at the next meeting.
So moved.
With the conditions that you.
And with the condition as specified by Chair Kim.
With the condition that we put artwork of some figuration or articulation on that sidewall.
Yes.
Do you have a second? Okay.
Do you have a second?
I don't think we need a roll
second
call
it.
for that,
I
do we?
second. Okay,
Yeah.
take a vote.
Just a voice vote would be fine.
A voice vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. No abstentions. The direction to staff is so approved. The motion to direct staff is so approved. Sorry. And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.